Alright, so I want to make a quick video showing some of the tools that I use to work on my car. They're all laid out right here, and I'm going to talk about each one individually. They may not all apply to you if you don't own a Bug, but they are generally helpful in any sort of Volkswagen ownership. So, without further ado, here we go. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to talk about is this book right here. If you're new to VWs and you haven't heard of this book, then I highly recommend that you go and get it, because it's a great resource for people who are new, who may not be so mechanically inclined. This is by a guy named John Muir. He writes in a very colloquial manner, makes lots of interesting observations about life in general, other than just Volkswagens. In this book is very complete and has always been a great resource for me. Even stuff I know how to do, I'll go back and refer to this book to make sure that I'm doing it the right way, and anything that I run into that I haven't done before, this is always my go-to. So this is the first thing that I recommend. Another thing I recommend if you get this book is to have it spiral bound. They don't come spiral bound, but it's worth the money because whenever you're using it, you can just flip it open and it'll stay open instead of trying to shut on you. Another tool that I really like using are flare wrenches. These are good for anything that's a pipe that is connected to something else with a nut, such as fuel lines or brake lines on Volkswagens. So my car, I have the 36 horsepower engine, and whenever I have to do anything with the fuel pump, I use this 12 millimeter wrench to take off the fuel lines. So you just break them up in like that. Now you can use a regular 12 millimeter box end wrench, but sometimes if you have an older car that maybe it's a nut that's stuck into it, you run the risk of stripping or rounding it off. So with this, you can always go around the pipe and then undo and then put it back. The other thing that these flare wrenches are good for are for brake lines. Any kind of old car, the brake lines are probably very corroded, and the nuts that go into the wheel cylinders or to any connectors are going to be hard to get off. These are the perfect tool to use that. You should never use a box end wrench on brake lines because you'll more likely than not round it off, and you can always get a better grip with these. So I recommend using these for fuel lines and brake lines on Volkswagens. Another helpful tool that I like to use are these wobble extensions. They come in handy in lots of different tight spots in VWs, and I'll show you some of the places that I use them. The times I most often use a wobble extension is if I'm taking off my fuel pump, and you can see that what the wobble extension does is it lets the socket move a little bit. It has a little give. And this is helpful when you're trying to get behind this fuel pump to get this nut and get it off. Another handy tool is a magnetic extension pickup. Anytime you're working on the engine, chances are you're going to take something off and then drop it. Whether it's a nut or a bolt or a washer or any other little small metal piece, it's going to drop, and usually it'll drop right down here and go underneath this pulley, or sometimes it'll also go underneath the fuel pump. And the best way to get those things out is with a magnetic pickup. You just fish it down there until you get what it is that you dropped, and then you're able to pick it right back up. It's a great tool to have. If you worked on VWs any amount of time, you know exactly what these are. They are feeler gauges, and my tip for these is to take them off of the holder that they come on and keep the ones that you use all the time most handy. What I do is I just take a piece of string and section them off. I'll either hang it around my rearview mirror or somewhere that they're handy. The two that I use for the valves, I put a little kink in them to make it easier to get up in there and adjust the valves. They also make them with a bend in them already, but they're usually more expensive and it's just as easy to do yourself. So that's what I do. Okay, I'm going to show you the rest of these and just talk a little bit about them. This tool right here is called, I've heard some people call it a torque meister. And what it does is for the rear axle nuts or for the gland nut on the engine, they're torqued down to 200 and something foot-pounds of torque, and you have to have a really long breaker bar to get those nuts off. And this makes things a lot easier if you don't have a long breaker bar, because basically what you do is you take the wheel off and you use the lug nuts to put this on, and then this goes over the nut and these teeth lock in, and then you just use a 10mm socket to undo or tighten the nut. It makes things so much easier, and it's what I like using. Okay, so these three tools go together whenever you're doing anything with your timing. This is a dwell tach meter. This is used whenever you're setting your points gap and checking your dwell. It needs to be 25 plus or minus 2 degrees. So this is an essential tool to check that. These two, this is a stroboscopic timing light, and this is a static timing light or a test light. There are two different methods for doing your timing. The old way is to use this and just hook it up to your distributor and set it accordingly. And then this is the more modern way to do things. If you have a 6-volt car, which I do, you have to use another car, you have to get power from another car's battery in order to use it. But I found that is a lot more of a precise way to set your timing than just using the test light. The last tool that I'm going to show you that I think is essential to have if you're a Volkswagen owner is a moving blanket or thick blanket of some sort. Working on a VW puts you in a unique position because you're having to kneel down in the back of the car instead of look over into the engine bay like you do in other cars. You can pick them up very cheaply at Harbor Freight, and it's nice to have more than one around in case one of them gets nasty or wet. You always have a backup. I usually keep mine in my back seat, and they're available and handy if I ever get stuck on the side of the road or if I'm ever having to do any work at home. It's a great thing to have around. So these are my go-tos and must-haves for working on my car. I hope that by watching this video you have learned a few new tips and tricks to help you in your Volkswagening life. And I'd like to hear from you. What do you think are some essential tools that I might not have mentioned that you use every day when working on your car? I hope that I can add a follow-up video from the comments that everyone leaves. And please like, subscribe, and share this video. And hopefully I'll see you soon with some more videos about working on a 60-year-old car in a modern world. Thanks so much for watching.